Before we start our journey, I have a question for the audience. Who actually knows what DTCC is? Oh, a few more than I would have expected. Okay, DTCC, Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation. We are the global heart, the global center of trading activities. Last year, we processed $3.7 quadrillion in securities. Just to kind of set the context. So as you hear that number, one or many of the things in your head should be, that's going to be a lot of regulations globally that we're going to have to be able to make sure that when we do GitOps, how we're doing it, how we're meeting those controls, especially when we're talking at velocity. As you can see, my name is Brian Cook. I started at DTCC about 6.5 years ago when the program started. It was OpenShift 3.11, and I was hired because I have Kubernetes background. I'm also a security professional, so please don't hold that against me. About 3.5 years ago, I took over the team when we started our journey into OpenShift 4. Okay, so as we proceed into it, we have laid out what we call a zero-touch model, right? So this is built around GitOps. Okay, everything's declarative, everything's code. No one on the engineering platform side, unless it's really detrimental, is allowed to make any changes in any environment. That includes development, standardization. So as we have defined what our zero touch is, right, our GitOps strategy, one of the things that we made sure is how we're going to be able to do it in 3 different buckets. And I'll get to what those buckets are into our journey. To do this properly, and this is going to be a little different, our journey starts with putting in GitOps into an organization that doesn't leverage it at that time, right? So as we started, this is net new. We have to convince people what the program, what do we want to do, what are we going to get out of it? We need a way to make it very clear what GitOps is going to provide to us on the platform side, right, as part of our initial journey. With that being said, cornerstone to this is the advanced cluster management. And I'll get into why we chose that technology in a moment to help us in this journey, to make our lives easier, which then we hope to make our customers' lives that much more simplistic. Okay. So also within to that, as we move in to Helm repositories, okay, where are we going to put our instruction files for deployments, whether it's platform or ecosystem? And of course, onto our third leg of our journey, as we get to chapter 3, how we're going to do it for our customers. And then, of course, the cornerstone is always continuous delivery. Now, what does that mean per organization? Is going to be slightly different. How fast do you want to move? What's the velocity? I used to give presentations called Security at Velocity for Kubernetes, where we could do things in hours, days, no longer weeks, months, years, and achieve a zero impact. Now, as we go into this, this is not a journey a single team can take alone, okay? As you can see, we have our own team that I lead, which is the Platform Development Security Engineering. Yes, you might know it as SREs, or as we call them, platform engineers, but there's more to platform engineering for what the team is required to do. Okay, there's 3 teams, so as we focus on that, we have our engineering team that focus strictly on the platform. Okay, we have a service integration team. They're responsible for the ownership of any services that we want to provide to our customers. How are they consumed? What's the metrics around those consumptions? How do we communicate that? Right? They are developer focused. They have to translate the platform. And believe it or not, we actually have our own governance and security team. Why? On this journey, we need people that understand the ins and outs of Kubernetes security. Kubernetes is difficult. Security is a lot more complex as we add into that, as we make that journey. So we want dedicated people to be the core. Those individuals are then responsible for coaching, training the actual security and risk teams, as well as developers. Internal teams are important as well. You have to set the context, what you're trying to achieve. On this journey that we've done, and I don't have it here because a little bit of the sensitive information, but in that journey, it is a full table of every security policy the organization has, matched to the NIST 800-190 framework for container application security, to our own internal policies for Kubernetes, how we're meeting that, and what technology. And of course, partnerships with our vendors in our ecosystem. So as we go into that, you also need one champion, at least, that knows GitOps. And as you can see here, my lead of the service integration team is Ray Keckler. I had a vision of Kubernetes with GitOps. I could spell GitOps. He changed the foundation of the process and what we do. To do this properly, as you talk to your customers, and as we talk to even our internal team, security, we have to be able to show what the value is. You have to be able to quantify it, right? So now we look at qualitative versus quantitative. So in our journey, we talk about faster rollouts. Well, what does that mean? It's going to mean different for everyone. The platform side, advanced cluster security to help us identify network policies. Tested and rolled out from a lab to all of our low environments in 2.5 weeks. Network observability, another key piece. Why? Kubernetes observability, not really there. So when you roll that out as part of the platform, that was done in 2 weeks to all lower environments lab. So these are great things as we produce that and we go into the next step of how do we get this to higher environments. But as we also talk about all of these things, resiliency, how are we keeping everything stable? Just because you roll out a new function, new feature, we have made sure that our stability has not dropped. And we continue to push in our journey, zero impacts in production. And as all of you know, that's not an easy feat as we continue on this. Now, we're also working to make sure that everything is a golden source of truth. We all need it. It helps us on our journey to explain to our customers exactly where our configuration is. We build a new cluster, we can replicate pretty quick that configuration across the board. Plus, as you can see, we want to make sure that we have designed metrics. Now, you'll start with a type of metrics after you research, right? Talk to the customers. What are we doing? How long does it take to deploy? What are the issues that you run into when you do deployments? So in the GitOps journey, we don't run into those issues. Or if we do, we have a path to minimize it, okay? So as we continue into this journey, on the platform side, when we roll out upgrades, new capabilities, we definitely want it in less than 10 minutes, okay? Ecosystem, and we'll explain that in a little bit later through the slides. They have a whole different strategy around GitOps, but the timeframes for some of these are going to be the same. And as you can see, the very last part is crucial with GitOps, with the golden source of truth. And that's greater than 99% protection against drift. If every one of your clusters are different, how do you troubleshoot it in a timely fashion to restore service? Okay. So as we continue into this journey, as you can see here, how do we upskill our folks that are running, the platform, the application teams, operations. They are the most important aspect to any program as we push forward. Part of that, as you can see, with GitOps, and we have for each team a level of training, which we also leverage Red Hat's learning portal on that, to be able to make sure they have the knowledge, what they're responsible, whether it's security, governance, building the clusters. How do we leverage Rackham? What is an SRE model? And more specifically, how does each one of those items that they are responsible for fall under GitOps? That includes if there is a security or governance concern, we roll it through code, no direct changes. And we can replicate that when we need. Part of the other journey is, now let's talk about our application partners, right? So we're talking about the platform team. We're talking on the other spectrum of our application developers. They may have experience in GitOps, Kubernetes. They may be new to Kubernetes. How do we get them on that journey? And we have actually created custom Red Hat learning paths for them to start. As we bring in the operations team to help relieve some of the work that we're doing on the engineering and security side, custom path for them to understand, internal shadowing, so they get firsthand knowledge of how we operate, so they are an extension of the team, as well as the speed. Now, we're going to talk about the platform in GitOps. This is our first chapter after the prologue as we move forward. I call this easy. The reason why I call it easy, we're the ones that have control of how this works. So how do we prove to the organization everything we're doing? First off, we know we need to set up a Git repository. Now, I'm not going to go too much into the setup of the repository. We've had other speakers this morning that have gone and done a fantastic job of this. So one of the things that we've rolled out, of course, is Cert Manager Operator via GitOps to all clusters. We've also done via GitOps dev spaces, which I'm sure we all remember and hearing about that, which actually was a happy requirement from a customer. And we said, aha, we can solve your problem, customer. Are you willing to help us do a proof of concept? In 1 month, that concept became a requirement. Right, so as we continue in, so as we roll through these and our cluster builds and setup, everything is GitOps. All centered around Red Hat Advanced Cluster Management. Okay, policies, code. We confirm that every application namespace we onboard has an egress policy. If there's one that does not exist, a default one is automatically implemented. Saves us on a security control. Developers then have a self-service portal where they, through a GitOps process, can add their own egress requirements. And here, as we speak as well, we use Argo to monitor those repositories and send that data into Rackham to be then pushed out in a hub-spoke model. Now, one of the things is we talk about customer self-service. We have a couple, and it's all through Git. One, go through an onboarding process, and fill out a form. We can have your namespace created in about 10 minutes. Policies, everything. You want to update your resource requirements? You go through the same thing, it's automatically updated. Kicks off Ansible, Ansible updates into Git, automatically rolls out. Customers don't need to wait for us. When it comes to what we do on some of the other things, we try to kind of keep it moving at a level of velocity that the organization is comfortable with. Now we go into chapter 2. This is what I call ecosystem. Medium complexity, right? Now we want to be able to onboard what's not native, cloud, native, application platforms, right? So now when we're talking security, third-party security, how do we onboard it? That's pretty easy. We know how to do that as a platform team. But the goal is, we have a different team that owns that service. So we need to train them. We need to show them. Oh, and I forgot to mention, we also have, through GitOps, an automatic build of a container that gets deployed to where you, as a customer on your journey, can generate your own Helm chart. Why would you need to create it from scratch? 90% of it's already configured. Okay. Observability goes into this. And again, as we go through our GitOps structure for those service owners, and by the way, they're the ones that update the Git repository. Platform team just helps out with guidance. Hands in the control of the service owners versus the platform team. We are there to help out, right? Everything goes through a Git push. And as you can see, this type of aspect, everything is done by the clusters themselves with Argo running on it. And Argo is pushed out by Rackham. In that case, we have no reliance on Rackham for that standpoint. Let the clusters have a level of maintenance, and then Rackham becomes the tool that has our observability centralized, as well as automatic discovery of workloads. So we know how they're rolling in. Now what every application team now wants as we go into journey number 3 into our chapter. Hey, we see the platform. We see how fast you guys are working. We see the capabilities you're doing for the ecosystem components, right? Zero trust, certificate management. We want to be able to leverage that. No greater response than having customers want to come to your platform, helping you change the culture, right? So as you can see, we want everything through Git. Everything is centralized. Make their life easy. Developers know how to use Git, right? We help them. We construct what their Git repo is supposed to look like by guidance as we continue on the journey. Okay? Same thing as we go through all of this. Again, not much changes from what we're doing from the ecosystem, except now we're working with our application teams. Now we're working with a much broader audience than observability. These folks are writing programs. They don't want to wait for anything. They want speed to deploy, speed to test, okay? Speed to build their container image. And we've tested that out through GitOps, where app devs were building their images as soon as they committed their code. A couple of minutes, image is available. Deploy it, have a nice time in development. You don't need to wait for us. We provide the guidance for you. Now, as we go into this journey, additional chapters will be written as we continue to work with customers, fine-tune where we're going. This is a never-ending journey. This is a great start to a program, and let me remind you that we started this GitOps journey with OpenShift 4 about 3.5 years ago. There are companies, yes, that are more advanced in the GitOps. There are some that are just learning. But as we all talk together, we can learn from each other to figure out from our industry, our organization, where our own journeys will be able to take us, how we can potentially get there.
Thank you. As you're heavily dependent on the GitOps and Argo CD culture, right? How do you manage scaling your Argo CD components automatically?
So very interesting. So the way we do Argo CD, if you're talking about the components and deploying it to new cluster builds and maintaining it, we do all that through Rackham, right? So the initial installation, we go through a lab environment, figure out what we need to do for deployment files, placement files, if you will. So that way, when we say install Argo, for the first time, it gets taken care of onto the Rackham cluster. And then from Rackham, we just have Argo monitor it through what we call, or what you're used to is the Argo application construct. So that's automatically templatized and created, so that way anytime we drop a new update or we put something in there, it's automatic. Now, with that being said, our placement file is automatically set for any cluster that we build After it comes up within 45 minutes, automatically in a day 2 RACM, everything starts kicking in. So the operator for Argo kicks in, the CRD gets deployed, automatically created.
Thank you. Are you using a centralized Argo instance or a per spoke cluster?
So we use centralized Argo on the RACM cluster for the platform. Okay, platform operators. When it comes to onboarding applications, and as we look into chapter 3 of application deployments, that'll all be on the clusters themselves, right? So that way we have a central control, but we're also pushing what we need on the clusters maintained by them. So application deployments, when we talk about observability, right? So like Dynatrace. Dynatrace is managed by Argo on the cluster, right? Not by the centralization. Now, when we talk about cluster autoscaling, all those configurations with Customize are in one repo, and RACM Argo is the one that helps that distribution through RACM. So we're leveraging the best of both worlds to be able to achieve a velocity that we're hoping to continue on this journey and still prove that we're able to meet or exceed regulatory controls.
So I actually don't have a technical question. I just had a quick question on how were you able to affect this culturally within DTCC? You have this like massive paradigm shift in how you operate operationally, and teams are siloed potentially, or stuck with their old ways. Just what did you do to influence that?
So that's a great question. So let me give you a little interesting tidbit on this. So we were looking at a will not be named or thou shalt not name Kubernetes technology replacement, right? With the end of life of OpenShift 3.11. A couple of things happened when we said, okay, we need to shift, and we need to shift now to OpenShift 4. The interesting aspect is we had 10 months to shift every cluster, rebuild, new technology, in the way 4 was different from 3. New ways that we had to go through architectural review boards, on-prem, DHCP, other aspects that changed dramatically, especially the use of Core OS. Because of that, we automatically implemented GitOps for the platform. So it wasn't a wait and see, it was a we've got to move, and the only way we're going to move in 10 months and shift everything and recreate everything is do it with our new RACM and Argo. And as a matter of fact, once we did that, we reverse engineered every single deployment file, every single namespace, and deployed it in GitOps in a cluster. 108 namespaces recreated in seconds. Application teams, go deploy. That journey and the way that we're able to continue to have the conversations of we have the controls, we have the proof. Now we need to train the ecosystem. So step 2, and the more people that get on that journey, the easier it is for the culture to change. Senior management sees what we do. They're well impacted. Hey, you want a new service, new capability you want to roll out? How fast do you want to roll it out? How fast do you want to code? Now we change the paradigm of why does it take so long? Easy roll up, easy roll back.
And actually, just a quick follow-up. As you see yourself going down this journey, I've worked with some customers that actually implement teams of solution architects. They actually have internal solution architects that go with application developers to onboard them to the platform, do debugging, and it's almost like a sales motion, which is something that I do. But any thoughts on that?
So on our new transition or new journey, and if you have time and you see him around the hall, please speak to my executive director, Vin, who's sitting back here. So as he's recently joined DTCC, now we're evolving to that type of model. So how do we impact security architects, service architects? How do we get them to leverage the platform, understand the platform? They don't need to know everything about it, but how do we guide them to leverage it the best? New capabilities, new ways of thinking. Let's not do the previous ways of 20, 50, 38 years, whatever it is, into a new platform where you have these capabilities to move faster. You have the capabilities to self-recover where we didn't necessarily have them before easily. That's how we start managing and monitoring and winning the hearts and minds of senior management and the culture.